It was really the TEDx talk that built my career coaching career, because that thing got me multiple book deals offered to me, a speaking agent, a book agent, a talent agent. So many people came to me versus me being this person that's like pushing and forcing things.
We're gonna share some tips for listeners on how to make a memorable speech.
So if you're gonna do flashback storytelling, you're gonna open up your talk that way, which I recommend to just about anybody. I think it's the most powerful and emotional, and you have the opportunity to create the most range of emotions, which usually is tied to something going viral, resonating, giving people inspiration to want to take something away. We have a lot of speaking coaches on deck, and a lot of clients, once they get booked on some big stages through us, are asking for that service. Some clients need more help than others, but I think the thing that anybody could take away right now, whether they got a speaking coach or not, is the power of a pause. So we craft speeches, we book you on stages. TEDx is just one of those, right? And we've had 100% success booking the past 100 clients for their TEDx talks.
100% success.
100% success. It's not a matter of if with us. I think it's really a matter of when.
Yeah, you're so confident about it. When I met you, I was like, really? You can just book anyone? And you were like...
It's just a numbers game.
Yeah.
You know, we put in the hours, we put in the hard work. You're essentially hiring us as you would any assistant, but we just have a lot of experience in getting it done. I think the most important thing is just anyone who's listening, whether you want to be a professional speaker or not, the cat is out of the bag that you need to have your voice out there for people to see you, hear you, and know about you.
Ever since I wrote my goals down with the pen, my dreams and reality have both been blending in. I just hope that in the end, my debt don't extend me on my dividends if it did.
Ashley Stahl, I'm so excited to talk to you.
You're such a treat.
I'm really excited because I was telling you the season's done. I was like, okay, season 2 is finished, but we got coffee and I'm like, I'm adding an episode. We gotta do this, you know? So now you're like the finale, which is great.
That's so cool to be able to be that.
And we met through Jessica Zweig, who was sitting in that chair, you know, a few months ago. Yeah, she's amazing.
She is. She's a special person. And I feel like I'm so surprised we haven't met before that because you're just such a special soul. You're doing such deep work. And people like you, I really love, because I'm in the business of amplifying and exploding people's brands. And even though everybody could benefit from that however they do, I always find it extra special when I meet somebody that's kind of under the radar in the way that you are. And you're happy to be that way. And you're so successful at being that way.
Thank you.
So yeah, happy to be here.
You know, it's interesting. Thank you for saying that too. But I was like so focused on building a former brand that I had, that it was about me and 2 other people, but really about the work, not us. And all 3 of us had like a big following in our own right.
Yeah.
And when I ended that company, it was like such a beautiful moment of like, okay, I'm making lemonade out of this real quick, you know? And from that, it was like writing the book, the podcast, like everything started to open up. My clients just started to get like, where I used to only be able to see a certain amount of people, I've like doubled it, you know, because I made so much space for that. So it's funny because you're meeting me at a time where, like I am starting to unfold more into whatever this is.
It's one of the hardest things to do is being in the in-between, because people just don't talk about how when you're in between, it could be so much longer than you think. And I don't know why this makes me think of like outer space and how time is so different there versus here.
There is no time.
Right, exactly.
Time is a concept of the mind.
It is. And here you can really feel every second of that time when you're in pain. You don't know what to do next. Not to say that you're in any pain, like you're so, but for me, the business I have now, there was like a 5-month hiatus for me to have the clarity on this business. And that's what balance is for me. I go all the way in. So I started my career in national security during Obama administration. Wow. And in like 2011, 12, I finished graduate school, learned all these languages, and worked at the Pentagon. And that was like years of clarity folded into one moment where I finally got there. And then it wasn't even the right path for me. That led me randomly into career coaching for 12 years. And the pivot point was actually a TEDx talk. Like, I got invited to give a TEDx talk. It was my first speech of my freaking life.
Oh, you got invited to?
Yeah, I was referred by somebody that I'd met at an awards ceremony. I got an award for my work in national security, and she referred me. And that's kind of rare now. Like my team, my agency, Wise Whisper, we spend a lot of hours helping clients get booked for the TEDx stage. We book people for all sorts of stages. But back then, like 15 years ago or whatever it was, I'm not the best at math, but I'd never spoken on a stage in my life, and that pivoted me into entrepreneurship. And that's what people don't realize is when you do one really big thing, it has the power to pivot and create an entire brand in one tiny little moment. And so for me, giving that one talk and popping on the TEDx channel with 40 million subscribers, algorithmically, you just have such an insane opportunity to get your voice out there in such a big way. So
Did you get like 30 book deals and all kind of offers and all these different things thrown at you at once?
Yeah. So, I mean, just think it's like leaving national security. I was working in Afghanistan. Next thing I know, I get this TEDx talk. I spoke at Berkeley and I got 80% of my leads. It launched me into a coaching business. I always had a wait list. Most of my leads were from TEDx. Like anybody who applied to work for me found me on TEDx or with me. And then from there, I got a book deal offered to me. I got a speaking agent. My keynote fees went from $5K to $30K, literally from 1 9-minute.
You went from a $5K speaking fee to $30K?
Yeah.
Like that?
Yeah, probably over like 3 years. I started as a free speaker, and then when I got that TEDx talk, it was suddenly I was a paid speaker.
Wow.
It just turned me into a speaker. I always knew that TEDx really helped me, but kind of speaking with clarity, it's like, okay, I knew I wanted to work in national security. I did it wasn't right for me. That TEDx talk pivoted me into career coaching. And there's a whole story there of like realizing I'm really good at getting jobs during the recession and helping friends while I was at the Pentagon. And that lent me into career coaching. But it was really the TEDx talk that built my career coaching career, because that thing got me multiple book deals offered to me, a speaking agent, a book agent, a talent agent.
Wow.
So many people came to me versus me being this person that's like pushing and forcing things. And that was one of the most humbling things, because if you think about it, the everyday entrepreneur, we're spinning our wheels on so many things for our PR. And if I really look at the past 15 years as a business owner, that 1 9-minute talk I spent 2 months planning and preparing for has done more for my career, my lead generation, my income than anything else. I actually tracked it. I ended up giving a second TEDx talk, and I've done over $2 to $3 million in revenue from these 2 talks, just in consulting over the past 10 years that has come my way.
Did you notice the difference from the first to the second?
Well, the first one was the first talk of my life, so I felt kind of weird giving it.
But as far as like result?
Yeah. The second one went so much more viral. So the first one got a few million views.
The second one did?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. Because I think I knew what I was doing, right? Like by that point, I'd had a career coaching business for 12 years.
But still, from the first one, I thought that was, well, and we'll get into this because now we just jumped right in. I want to explain what we're talking about. But so from the first one was the one you got all those book offers and all these leads and everything. And then the second one did even better than that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, the first one got a few million views, first talk of my life. And then the second one got over 10, 12 million views.
Yeah.
And that one skyrocketed to the top 100 of the TEDx channel. And that was all from me being a career coach and owning that career coaching lane. And yeah, I mean, now speaking of clarity, how we started, right? In my career coaching years, I helped so many people land job offers. I wrote a book called U-Turn. I have my show U-Turn podcast. Like everything was about career clarity, pursuit, being on purpose in your career. I never would have, in the background of all of that, there was this gratitude for TEDx and what it did for me. And so the whole time I was thinking, I wish I could just help people write their TEDx talks. And then I thought, well, that's a weird business model. Like, how am I supposed to find people right when they get the booking opportunity? And then I realized I met this booker all these years later, and she told me she had booked over 100 people for TEDx talks. She'd helped them get booked. And so I partnered up with her, and now we have an offer that's pretty much done with you. We help you write and we help you book your TEDx talk. Yeah, done for you.
It's like a turnkey service. Let me do an intro and then we'll talk. I'm not going to do a full intro because I want to get into it as we have been, casually. But for people to know what you're talking about right now, you founded the Wise Whisper Agency.
Yeah.
And you do help people become professional speakers and skyrocket their personal brand.
Yeah.
You told me this, and it's on your Insta bio too. You've helped more than 100 people book TEDx talks.
Yeah.
And of course now you're even, you're going beyond that, like maybe commencement speeches or whatever else, right? Like whatever stage. I want to thank you for watching, but also please don't forget to subscribe, because we're noticing in the analytics that some people are watching multiple videos but haven't subscribed yet, and it really helps me to continue to improve the show. One of those improvements is that this season I'm only having one sponsor for the entire season instead of 5. And it's Leela Quantum Technology. So they are the official sponsors of the Quite Frankly podcast. And I'm so excited because if you have followed me for a while, you know how much I love this technology. They have multiple third-party double-blind studies to show how this affects your health in a really positive way. But also the way I use it is I write my intentions on a piece of paper like this, and I put it in there, and it's now in the quantum field. So
More about that in a bit, and thank you for watching.
Your own TED Talk, that second one, has 12 million views. And in this episode, I just want people to know, because it's so early on, we're gonna share some tips for listeners on how to make a memorable speech. And how they can work with you if that's what they want to do. So, all my episodes have been spirituality, wellness, very like, Jessica was here speaking light language, you know what I mean? Like that's the kind of stuff. But I think that this is a really important thing, because you've helped, the kinds of people that you work with are like the kind of people I interview on this show, right? I made a list here: New York Times bestselling authors, doctors, wellness experts, mental health professionals, corporate executives, athletes, corporate leaders, media personalities, everyday change makers. And why I think that's so important is that there are a lot of people, especially in like the spirituality, wellness space, they have such good content. And yet, such good like offerings. But you look at their stuff and it's like, I'm like, oh, come on. You know what I mean? Like you really could do better. This is really important for them to know. It's like such an important investment. I have clients that I already know now would love something like this.
It's so powerful. And speaking of spirituality, like there is something so deeply spiritual about being able to make sense of your story in a way that helps, heals, and supports someone else. And I think the best wordsmiths, so my team is pretty world-class. We're not normal. Like our executive creative director spent over a decade at Apple. She wrote helped write Apple's Credo. She crafted decks presented to Steve Jobs. She wrote speeches for his executive team. Our writers come from TV shows like Succession and The New Girl and Lizzie McGuire and That's So Raven, like shows that are iconic.
I watched,
like,
for sure.
Exactly. And so it's like world-class talent. And that's the thing that has come up for me in my heart is I had Lyme disease when I was like 10, and then I got it again when I was 30. Once I got to the doctor's office, I met so many people in the waiting room that looked incredibly sick. And they would tell me that they spent years trying to find a solution. They would go to doctor after doctor. And when you do that, I feel like it's such a painful experience because you don't have answers and you have a problem and you feel this powerlessness, like, how can I solve something if I don't know what it is? And so in the same way, it's interesting, they figured out that they had Lyme, or that was the diagnosis. There was this relief that they all expressed, right? Like even though
at least I know what I'm experiencing, right? Yeah.
But it wasn't great news, right? Like for them at least, unless they have a resource like what you're talking about. And so I think that good storytellers do the same thing, where we put words to the human experience in a way that provides relief to people. And when you're talking about spirituality, energy healers, even scientists, like I'm not affiliated directly with TEDx, and I'm happily not, because I actually love to operate as a separate agency, helping people through the lens of their benefit and not what the platform wants, right? And obviously TED and TEDx, they have their guidelines, and I'm very inspired by what they're doing, but we've really learned how to help people be aware of those, look at those, but then make it work for them. And so a couple of the areas that are dicey, and even though we're booking for all sorts of stages, and this doesn't apply, but with TED or TEDx it does, is A, self-promotion. You have to be very intentional about how you self-promote, or your talk can be taken down. B is science. They're very quick to consider something pseudoscience if it's new science, right? So a lot of cutting edge doctors, pioneers in their field, they might have a New York Times bestselling book, but that none of their research is considered widely accepted science. That really should not be showing up in a talk, or it's going to get taken down most likely. And then the other piece is spirituality, right? We have all sorts of different clients. We have one who is a minister, and we're really working with him on how does he talk about God? What are the words that he uses? Because we have to remember that, again, like if you want a speaking career, you might as well go to the top, right? And the TED and TEDx channels both each have 40 million subscribers. Why would you go conference after conference to 200 or 300 people when you could hit it up in front of 40 million people?
And by the way, so for the investment, right?
Yeah.
You have your flat rate.
Yeah.
That is what you would pay to go speak at 10 other conferences. For the flights, the hotels, whatever. How about just do this one big one? What you're saying about this spirituality is so accurate, and people really need to hear this, because in that like wellness world, they get mad, and I get it. They're like, my video got taken down. It sucks because I'm trying to help people. Just work within the system. Like there are these things, there are restrictions. Some of them, it's like, it's actually for the benefit. Like there is actually a benefit to like having some regulation, but yeah, like work within it.
Yeah.
When I was a TV journalist, I would like pitch things like, I'd be like, guys, the benefits of red light therapy or whatever. They're like, no, this is crazy. What are you talking about? Now it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Red light therapy. It needed like 10 years.
There's such a pain to being that person though.
It's a pain. And actually, like I was very resentful at that time.
Yeah.
And now I'm not. Like I was like, you know what? I'm going to leave, start my own brand where I can talk about whatever I want. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's really important, like that's again, to reiterate what I said from the very beginning, why it's so good to work with someone like you, because you know those guidelines and you'll help them navigate it. Like, hey, don't use that word, switch it to this.
Yeah.
This will get you flagged, this won't. But in the end, you're saying the same thing.
Exactly. And like, I'm so proud that we've helped more than 100 people, get themselves their TEDx talk. But even, at our price point, it's like our signature program is really about helping people craft the best talk of their life and get it booked on a really big stage. And so people have come to us to do that, all sorts of stages, all sorts of talks, but obviously TED and TEDx is a very asked for service because it's such a powerful brand. And I'm so inspired by the people who come to me because I think having hope for yourself is one of the most vulnerable things you could do. And giving yourself the worthiness, you are worthy, right? But it's like stepping into that worthiness of like, I do have a voice and I do have something to say. And everybody has a different agenda, right? Like there's what you have to say for yourself, right? Like maybe you have a business or a goal and you want more book sales or more podcast listeners or whatever. And then there's what you have to say for the world and the benefit for the listener and what you want for other people. And I've always had kind of a hard time myself with my own ego of like, letting myself say that I have something to say that is valuable, important for other people. It's always been hard for me in my own ego to say what I have to say is valuable. And it's taken a lot of mindset work for me to really land into that. And I know a lot of other people have that feeling too.
A lot of clients come to me for that. Like people think it's, because I do energy work and that's the basis of my work. Some listeners will know, but not always is it like a physical thing. Yeah, there have been miraculous experiences where people are like literally having an ailment for 10 years and it's gone after a session.
Yeah.
But a lot of times they're like, hey, I want to write a book, but I have anxiety. I don't feel like I'm good enough, whatever. And so that's what we're working on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so powerful when somebody can really step into the world of healers. Like I don't really know how I could get here without them because my business, it's doing incredibly well. And the first 12 months we did about $1 million without any marketing. Like it was just word of mouth. Wow. And now I have a team that I'm so inspired by. And I know that there's the soul line and the goal line, and that's just goal line stuff. That's outcomes that we're doing. But on a soul level, it's like, I know that my mission in life is to help people share their story in a way that moves others so deeply that they can make different decisions. And I do think that storytelling is as much of an art as it is a science. And I've even realized lately, I was just putting it to the page and giving presentations to Tony Robbins' audience actually about this just a couple weeks ago, about how I really think there's about 8 types of storytelling. And I'm putting myself on the spot because I don't know if I have all 8 of them memorized of what they are unless I get jogged by my own notes on them. But we often hear like the Joseph Campbell hero's journey. So that's like standard storytelling, right? Beginning, middle, end, like climax, struggle, solution.
Refusal of the call and then you accept the call. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hero's journey. And then the second type I see a lot of is gap storytelling, like Martin Luther King, I have a dream. You see that in sales conversations a lot. Like it's not about where you are now, it's about where you could be. And all these different types of stories can be in books, they can be in movies, they can be in speeches, right? So hero's journey, you can use that in a speech, you could use it in a book, whatever. Same thing with gap stories, right? I have a dream, or what could be possible. And we see a lot of politicians doing that. And then there's drama storytelling. We see that in movies and TV, right? Like mostly TV series where it's like all these little dramas. Like I think of our writer who worked on Succession. Like Succession had so many different dramas. You don't really know what the finale is going to be. Like you're you're on a ride. You don't know where it's going.
Yeah.
That's drama storytelling. And then there's mosaic storytelling. Like I think about the Arab Spring. Like I worked in counterterrorism during the Arab Spring. And I remember like December 2010, 2011, like in Tunisia, the youth were rising up against the government. Then we saw that in Egypt. And then we saw that in neighboring countries. And then all of those tiny little pieces of the mosaic came together and created a full movement, So there's so many different types of storytelling, but at Wise Whisper Agency, we really lead with 2. The first one is flashbacks, and the second one is education. So flashback stories, I think, are most powerful, especially when you're opening up a talk.
Which is how you started yours.
Yeah, exactly.
The kidnapping story.
Yes, my first, and I actually think there's something really powerful, not just about it being a flashback. So anybody listening, if you type in, Ashley Stahl's TEDx, how to figure out what you really want, it's reposted on all sorts of YouTube channels. You can find it. But it opens up with my dad in the kitchen, getting a phone call that I was kidnapped. And what's powerful about that is it's a true flashback. I'm bringing people right into a moment with no context. And it's like you're turning on a spy movie in a crazy scene. You can't stop. You can't help but stop and watch, right? That's what good storytelling is. And obviously any speech, especially if it's ending up on YouTube for whatever channel, you're going to need to have a title that is incredibly SEO optimized. If you look at the top 100 most performing TEDx talks on the TEDx channel, you see titles like The Art of, The Skill of, 3 Ways to, The Reason Why. Very straightforward titles. People aren't being cute or coy or silly with their titles. They're being straightforward. Because ultimately YouTube is a search engine.
Yes.
And you just need clear SEO optimized, scratching the itch of what the thing is. But once you have your title down, it's really about how you open up. And the opener of your story really does need to be a flashback, powerful moment. And you see a lot of speakers, they might be more conversational. They'll get on stage and they'll share some sort of shocking statistic. But if we really look at that, it's like sometimes that shocking stat brings people in with their attention, but you can't hold people, because then you need to still be just as powerful after you shock them. And people start to look down at their iPhone, get distracted, whatever, they stop listening to the talk. When you have a good flashback story, the story carries the listener. So we usually encourage our clients when, TEDx, we write a lot of those talks with the client because it has to be done with them. But other speeches that we do, we ghostwrite. And we have a lot of clients that come in for keynotes, and we do a lot of ghosting on those. So yeah, the flashback, I think, is, and the question I ask anybody listening is, what is the most, if you can look at the top 10 moments of your life that really impacted the way you think and really impacted who you are, the way you see life, all the way back to being a little kid. For me, my birthday when I was 10, my dad got me luggage because he couldn't afford a crazy gift. It was the first time I knew what money was. And I remember being like, why can't I have what I want? Oh, it's because of money that I'm not getting what I want. So that was like an inflection point for me. And I think I formed a lot of beliefs when I was 10. Everybody has those different moments that they have. Those are so powerful to know when you pull on stories. And a lot of professional speakers on the speaking circuit will call those bits and bobs. They have these little stories that they can grab as a little bit and throw into their speeches. And so, I also want to point out that I open up my TEDx talk with my dad's story. It's not my story. It's a flashback for him. And I think that's important to point out because a lot of people, especially on social media, especially healers, we feel pressure for everything to be our own story. But great storytellers do not have to tell their own story. Great storytellers can tell stories that, are somebody else's story that they have a lot of reflecting to share through.
Yeah. It's interesting because so that story, you had not really been kidnapped.
No.
Right?
Yeah, it ended up
How
being
did that lead then into the rest of your talk?
Yeah.
How did you correlate that for the person listening who hasn't heard it yet?
Yeah, so spoiler alert for anybody who watches the talk. My dad got a phone call from somebody that pretended to kidnap me so that he would wire them his life savings, and he almost did. My dad, at the time, my dad was 75 years old. Now he's 81. But I mean, they got his, they paralyzed his amygdala, or his
the fierce response.
Yeah, I mean, he panicked, and they had somebody on the phone screaming as if it was a girl like me.
Wow.
And what we would learn later is that this scam is actually quite common, and that's an unintended effect of my TEDx talk going viral, is that so many people have reached out and said that scam happened to them. And because they saw my TED talk, they knew it was a scam.
Whoa.
And it spared them, which is so funny to think about how these secondary effects, come out of the things that we do.
Yeah. So let's go back to somebody like watching, let's say, who wants to write their speech, right?
Yeah.
There's the memorable speech.
Yeah.
That is be starting with a crazy story, a relatable story.
Yeah.
And then I think you had a third one too.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so yes.
Yeah.
So crazy story.
That would be like yours, I guess, right? Like shocking.
Yeah, a shocking story. So if you're going to do flashback storytelling, you're going to open up your talk that way, which I recommend to just about anybody. I think it's the most powerful and emotional, and you have the opportunity to create the most range of emotions, which usually is tied to something going viral, resonating, giving people inspiration to want to take something away.
Yeah.
So if you're going to do that, there are two spots, right? So one is crazy storytelling, one is relatable storytelling. Crazy storytelling, my dad gets a phone call that I'm being kidnapped. Relatable storytelling is more of a personal moment. I think a lot of people listening, they might think, I need to have a crazy story to have a good talk.
No, you know what's interesting? I'm writing a book right now, and in the preface, so not even the intro yet, there is I start with a relatable story. Yeah. Not even relatable. It's just something that, like an experience that triggered me writing the book.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the thing to really pay attention to. So I have one client and he's a stem cell researcher. He had 2 fatal car accidents he was in. He walked away from both unscathed. Everybody else passed away.
Wow.
That's a crazy, both.
Whoa.
Crazy story. And I think a lot of people feel this pressure of they need to have something equally like that. So that's a crazy story, right? Like being in a fatal car accident twice, surviving, everybody else not, that's crazy. I think a lot of writers feel, or not even writers, storytellers, people, business owners,
bloggers, anybody, content creators.
There's a collective belief that you need to have a wild and crazy story, and there's a belief that it needs to be your own story, right? Which I was trying to myth bust for people. If you're a healer, you don't need to keep coming on and processing your own life there. If you want to, you can, and turning it into story. But I know that there's a line between what's personal and what's private, right? And so many healers, it's like, I don't know if I want to share this thing I'm going through on social media right now. And I just want to encourage them to realize that could be a time to start to pull from other stories.
Hey, I just really quickly want to tell you about the necklace that I'm wearing. You might see me wearing it in a lot of these episodes. I actually give it to many of the guests too. They're from Leela Quantum Technology, and as you can see, there are little capsules inside that are supercharged with what they call quantum energy. And it's just like walking around with one of the full-sized infinity blocks with you wherever you go. So you can get those on the website too and be quantumly upgraded wherever you go.
Again, some people might feel like they just don't have a crazy story, so you could tell somebody else's crazy story, or you can tell a relatable story. And I think about an energy healing client that we had actually, who in her intake form, we have a really deep intake form, and it takes clients 1 to 2 hours to fill out. And we take a lot of pride in being so done for you that we get a lot of the work done for clients over 4 or 5 Zoom calls, whatever it is. We work in between, right? For a keynote client, we're speech writing up to 100 hours in between these calls. But if we're booking somebody on a huge stage like a TEDx or something else, it could take over 200 hours to get what we want.
Wow.
But that being said, the intake form has been a deep dive for clients. And this one, she put in her intake form this story about how she was in high school and how she wasn't popular and she felt a little bit pudgy and uneasy in her skin. And she ended up getting invited to the popular kid's birthday party. And she said that one of the girls came up to her and said he wanted to talk to her. And so she got so excited, she went to the bathroom to zhuzh her hair. And when she came out on her way out of the bathroom, she heard the guy say, "Ew, gross, I don't want to talk to her." And that messed up her confidence for 8 years.
Wow.
That one moment. And so that's just a relatable story. How relatable is it? And here's the problem. People spend too much time thinking, is this going to be relatable? And leading with that makes it hard to be relatable. Like Martin Scorsese says, the most personal is the most creative. So
well, even as you were telling the story, I was so sucked in. Yeah, I was pulled into it.
Exactly.
And it's just a normal story.
It's just a normal story.
I mean, everybody's experienced something like that, right?
Yeah.
But you also talk about, that just reminded me, authenticity.
Yeah.
And that's so important.
Yeah.
Especially for a talk. It's just be yourself, because people can tell when you're not being you.
Yeah, people can. And I mean, for me, having worked in national security, they were literally teaching intuition through the lens of life-saving strategies to not die if you enter the Central Intelligence Agency or So I was trained to understand incongruence at that level, meaning somebody's saying something, but there's something about their body language that's countering it and canceling it out. And so I think being in that integrity is so important. And, you know, we see all the research that the majority of communication is not what's being said, it's how it's being said and how it feels, and tone of voice, body language, you know, facial expressions. So, yeah, I think authenticity is a lot of delivery. And I tell clients that, because we get a lot of clients coming in that just want to skyrocket their brand as a speaker. And we tell them, like, 50% of being a great speaker is not about what you say, it's about how you deliver it. Great speakers are great actors. And you've got to be game to be a great actor in order to make the difference you want to make.
I know you guys are, so you're writing the speeches, right? But are you also are you teaching them that part too? Like how to deliver it? Are they doing it with you?
We have a lot of speaking coaches on deck, and a lot of clients, once they get booked on some big stages through us, are asking for that service. Some clients need more help than others. But I think the thing that anybody could take away right now, whether they got a speaking coach or not, is the power of a pause. And you see, I just did it. It gives you a second to your cognition to move with the other person. I think a lot of people mess this up when they're giving talks as subject matter experts, because they know, and I'm doing it probably on this podcast, like, and that's the thing about podcasts, it's so conversational. I'm not thinking of myself as a performer and a presenter, but if it's me and an audience, all I'm thinking about is, and I tell clients this all the time, pause until you're uncomfortable and then add a few seconds. Like, be really uncomfortable.
And what does that do?
I think that if you pause at the right points, it allows people to actually stay with you. Because once you lose somebody, if they haven't processed what you're saying, they stop listening because it's cognitive overload, right? So your pause is your way of saying, I care about your cognition, take your time with this, and then stay with me.
And it gives you a chance to digest what you just said.
Yeah.
But you know what's interesting is that's the opposite of what you're told to do as a content creator, which is cut all the pauses out. Whenever there's a pause in the video, they're like, cut it out. That's why you see so many quick cuts in YouTube videos. Yeah. Because they're like, look, somebody's gonna click out of your video. Yeah. You gotta keep talking, don't stop.
It's so different, right? Video content's a little speedier, but it's also the expectation of a 60-second video clip is that you need to speak in sound bites. Yeah. And you know what? That's actually why I really don't like hiring publicists at Wise Whisper Agency to help us with any of our speech writing. So anytime somebody comes in for a speech with us, whether it's a TEDx or anything, they get a creative director. The creative director's on the call, and then they get if it's a TEDx talk, we can't write your talk fully for you, so we have content editors. If it's any other speech, it's a speech writer, and we can do as much creative lifting as we want. But the thing that's so important on that is I've found that a lot of publicists would come in and be like, I would love to creative direct TEDx talks or whatever. And what I learned through it was, like, these people are here to help you speak in sound bites.
They have a news mind.
That'd
be a good person to go for, like, hey, I'm going to be on Good Morning America.
What are my 3 tips?
Yeah, because you have 3 minutes, maybe. But that's a big segment, 3 minutes.
Yeah, like this, giving the greatest talk of your life, whatever it is, TEDx or not, that is a piece of art. That's a piece of poetry. And often publicists are great at giving sound bites in the matrix, which is good for short form video content. But for long form content, especially a keynote speech or a talk on a YouTube channel as big as TED or TEDx or any of those, you really do need to have a completely different mind when you're writing. So anybody listening, if you're thinking about asking your publicist to help you write a speech, I hope you find somebody who's more poetic.
So walk me through this. Let's say a client comes to you. I'm that person. Somebody listening is that person. Which, by the way, do you have an offering? You have some kind of offering, right? Yeah. For our clients?
For our
listeners?
Yeah. Anybody here. So anybody who reaches out, $1,000 off. You just need to say you come through Frank, and within 90 days of episode release. So we're at wisewhisperagency.com. Just hit us up. And it's for any of our services.
Okay, just say Frank sent you and you get $1,000 off.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, yeah, huge.
Yeah.
Like, because you know what? Like, when people are watching, especially again in this like wellness, health space or anything, I have a lot of clients who are like, massive CEOs, and they're like, I have something I want to say, you know, but they just don't like. If I have somebody I'm thinking of now, and this is why I say this, where I was like, you would be a great podcast host, and he's like, I don't like, where would I start? I don't know what to do. Like, who would shoot it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, this is such a good thing to be like, go to Ashley, go to Wise Whisper Agency, which of course I'll have it, you know, all the links everywhere, and know that this is not just possible, it's like very possible, very doable, very at your grasp. So this person's coming to you. What is the process?
So anybody who signs up with us, they find us on the website, they apply, or they fill out the contact form. Somebody in enrollment will reach out, and we have many different things we're doing, right? So we craft speeches, we book you on stages. TEDx is just one of those, right? And we've had 100% success booking the past 100 clients for their TEDx talks. 100% success. 100% success. It's not a matter of if with us. I think it's really a matter of when.
Yeah, you're so confident about it. When I met you, I was like, really? You can just book anyone? And you were like, it's
just a numbers game. You know, we put in the hours, we put in the hard work. You're essentially hiring us as you would any assistant, but we just have a lot of experience in getting it done. But we've booked people for MGM Grand's annual event, South by Southwest, American Dental Association, all sorts of different speeches. But there's two different types of speaking, right? There's speaking for your brand, which is like getting your book out there. If you're a coach or you want clients, like offering your services to an audience. A lot of those speakers should speak for free if they get in front of targeted, aligned audiences. Because here's what happens if you go the other route, which is speaking for high compensation. If you want to be a full-time speaker and you want to speak for pay, you already do need to speak for free enough to have enough success in speaking. But then once you're paid, you become a client, you know, you're navigating a customer, and then you have to morph your speaking to adhere to what the customer wants, and you're not promoting your services to the extent that you're going to be permitted speaking for free. So Wise Whisper Agency, we have an offer on an ongoing basis. We pitch our clients to up to 50 stages a month, and we get them booked on stages, whether it's in person or online. Obviously online, we get a lot more success because there's so much more we can find. But we have clients that are like, you know, I'm based in Texas and I just want to be in front of people who are wealthy and Christian. And I want to be in front of stages and audiences of that. And we'll book them on events for that. So we do stage booking, we do speech writing, we also craft books. Like we have a whole full ghostwriting, full suite indie publishing team. One of our ghostwriters wrote Conversations with God. And
that's huge.
Yeah, really incredible talent.
So this is like all part of the same agency, right? So not everybody's just booking, hey, I want a TEDx talk or I want a whatever talk. You will write books for people?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we write books. We
cool. So does this offer go to any of those people?
Yeah, anybody who comes in, but most people want to craft a signature talk, and a lot of clients, of course, have come and said, "Can you help me brainstorm and craft my TEDx talk and get it booked on stage?" So anybody who comes in for that specifically, they'll fill out a contact form. They'll hear from us, and we'll have probably an hour conversation with them because we want to make sure that you're a fit for this, like that we can win for you, that we can help you get this done, and that's why we have a high success rate where we screen and make sure we're helping the right people. And so we'll hear like what is on your heart, what is the talk you have living inside of you. And then if you decide to sign up, we will send you our intake form and you'll spend a couple hours with it. Then you'll have an onboarding call, 45 minutes, and it'll be with our creative director. And she'll go, or he or she will go through your intake form with you. What are those stories that resonate with you? Or, what are those moments from your life? And we're really indexing for a couple of things. Like a lot of subject matter experts have expertise on something, but what they don't realize is there's probably 3 or 4 topics of a talk they could do.
Yeah.
And the worst thing you could do is just pick a topic.
Yes.
You need to pick which topic you have the most original thinking. And usually there really is just one of those 3 or 4 topics that it's like, oh, we're listening to you talk about this and you're speaking in a way that feels new, original, and fresh. That's where we like to go and follow. So that 45-minute call for onboarding is really just talking about your project, your intake form, what might be fresh for you. And then maybe a couple weeks later, we start your project. We do 4 Zoom calls over 2 to 3 months, 90 minutes each. And this is the case for any speech writing that we do. So the first call is really about what is your brilliant idea and what is the flashback story we want to open up with. And in if it's a TEDx talk, you really have 3 to 6 pages for that, right? That's 8 to 18 minutes. That doesn't give you more room than 2 to 3 talking points, right? So we might start to brainstorm what are your 2 to 3 talking points. And if it's a TEDx talk, we're spending a lot of time on pulling information out of you so that our content editor can take from those meeting transcripts your exact words and just put them on the page and help polish and distill those so that you have a working draft at hand. If it's any other talk, sometimes our speaker will just run with it and do a whole creative lift, completely ghosting something for you. But by the time we get to the second Zoom call, we have the opening of your talk written that moment. Like my TEDx talk, talking about how my dad was brewing his coffee and he got a phone call from a kidnapper. That whole story would be written by your second call. And then we might have one talking point on there. And in that second Zoom call, we just go through kind of how do we capture your essence even better? How do we take your talk to the next level here? What could be better about the talking point? And once we get that grounded, we go into, okay, where's the rest of this draft going? And we'll have the creative director pull as much magic out of you and really coach you into really reflecting properly into what does the rest of your talk look like? And then from there, in between calls, our content editor, our speech writers, they're going to spend a lot of time putting all your words into the draft. And then on the third call, you have a full draft and we rip at it. We go through it. And then the fourth call, we have your final draft. And then we hand it to our booking team who works with you to get it booked. And we largely take the burden off of you to do that work.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then from that point, and then they, let's say book the talk.
Yeah.
Do they have enough, like, is it booked far in advance that they have time to like, okay, spend months with this to really like perfect it? Okay.
Yeah. So
cool.
Like it depends on what we're booking, right? So if we're booking for a TEDx and that's what our client is engaging us for, a lot of TEDx curators want to invite people into a second round interview. So, it could take you up to a year, maybe a year and a half to finally get that yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I would say maybe we spend 3-4 months writing your speech. Then we hand it to the booking team. And if it's a TEDx, they could spend up to, like easily 10 to 12 months just pitching you, doing submissions with you and for you. And then by the time you get a couple second rounds, you have those conversations, you might get that talk. We just got a couple clients booked this week that I'm really excited for. And then from there, you've got it. And even then, the talk runs 3, 4, 5 months out. We just got a client booked this week and their talk isn't for 6 months.
Wow.
So these talks do run 3, 4, 5, 6 months out.
But also think about all this effort you're putting into this, like 3 to 4 months just to write it and get it to a good place.
Yeah.
Because I didn't even think of this until you were talking, but we live in a world where ChatGPT is so big. And I just saw your eye roll, right?
Yeah.
Because I do the same thing. Being somebody who is a writer, like I was a print journalist before I was a TV journalist. Okay, like that's my background. That's like I was the editor-in-chief of my college paper. I love to write. So when I have all of these friends who, I love them, or people I just know on social who have big followings, and they'll message me and they'll be like, can you promote my book? And then they'll send it to me. And I've never said yes to anyone, not just them, but because then I feel like if I say yes, I have to say yes to everyone.
Yeah.
But the reason why I don't want to is because half of them, when they send it to me, I can tell ChatGPT wrote the entire thing for them.
Oh my gosh.
And a few of them have told me that that's what they did. They're like, oh, ChatGPT is amazing. I just literally say, write a book on blank and use, these resources. And I'm just like, where is so you basically just regurgitated information, and where's the soul?
Yeah.
Like ChatGPT is not gonna say, hey, let's pull that story from your childhood, going to the bathroom and hearing that boy say that about you, right? Or your dad getting the call that you were kidnapped, allegedly. And like all these things are not gonna be in that book.
Yeah.
And people can feel that.
Yeah.
And that's why none of those books have been bestsellers. Whereas someone like Jessica Zweig, who's our mutual friend, just had a USA Today bestseller. But because that is like, she really poured herself into that book.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
So I know the answer, but I want to hear it from you of like somebody listening being like, well, I can just have ChatGPT do what she just said. Why not?
I think ChatGPT is great for title searches because
I do it for my YouTube titles.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
SEO optimization. Yep. It's a good research assistant. Hey, I'm researching neuroplasticity for a TEDx script, with a client, or I'm researching this for a keynote for a client. What are your thoughts on this?
Check, right?
Fact checks.
Hey, we're saying this in the speech. Is that accurate to say?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when I think about a good speech that we're writing, there's really 3 layers. Layer number 1 is the bones. If it's a TEDx talk, it's like, all right, you can't fit more than 2 to 3 points. What's your opening story? What are your 2 to 3 points? Then we have the conclusion. That's the bones. And like I said, we like to pull on people's original thinking for that. So it's like, okay, let me get that all here. And then from there, it's like, okay, beyond the bones, and maybe we get the bones on the page after 2 or 3 Zoom calls, and we have that draft. But then it's like, well, what's the soul of this talk? So we had a client who wrote a talk about the banking industry and how it has systemic racism and marginalization of women and minorities. And that talk, when we really zoomed out, right, he has an opening story about somebody giving him a shot with money and giving him a chance in the banking world. And then he gives a lot of content about the banking industry. When we zoomed out, we were like, this is actually a talk about giving people a second chance in life. Ooh. And so that's the soul of a talk, right? And then the third layer is the message, right? So we can look at the talk, we could look at their original thinking and their points, we could look at the soul and put some content in there about second chances and really move people through that, right? Making it about something deeper. But then that third layer is really beyond that. That's the message. So we look at the talk and say, what's the message here? Well, the message is that people aren't paperwork or that you owe it to the world to do this, that, or the other thing. And then we could pepper that throughout. So I think ChatGPT is really missing that layer cake and that soulfulness. And I'm sure there's a way to teach it, but so far I have not yet seen it in a way that our writers don't even touch ChatGPT.
They don't?
No.
Yeah. So would you say ChatGPT could write somebody's speech?
Yeah, I think they could write a speech. I just don't think it'd be good. I think ChatGPT would be better at just giving an outline. I think they would be great at giving an outline for a speech. That's a great point.
Yeah. You're right. Yeah. What, okay, I want to ask you, this is totally off topic from everything we've talked about, but you have mentioned working in the intelligence agencies. Yeah. You were in Afghanistan. You were at the Pentagon.
Yeah.
In that whole, it's coming from a world of like counterterrorism, right? I heard it. Recently, I was in Tennessee, I think it was like 4 or 5 months ago, and I was supposed to be there to have dinner with Sadhguru. I don't know if you know Sadhguru. Yeah. And it would have been my second time being with him in that capacity of like one-on-one kind of a thing. So they invited a few people to dinner with him. He had that a brain surgery emergency and had to cancel. Wow. So while we're already all there, and this is like all happening last minute, they're like, you know, we still went through a program. It was an amazing experience, actually a life-changing experience, but they played a video of an older talk he had done to a private audience. And in that, he said something. I mean, this is, you know, we're talking like a 2-3 hour thing, but there was one thing that really stuck with me. And I was like, oh, I should ask Ashley about this.
Oh, funny.
Because he said, I think it was like, I don't remember what year he said. It might've been like, it was older, like 2006, 2008. And he said he spoke to a presidential candidate. He didn't say who it was. He's like, this person ended up being the second one. He didn't win, right? It was like the runner-up. So it was like the two people that made the like passed the primaries, everything, and it was the one that didn't win. And he said, and it must have been during Iraq wartime. I'm not sure, but based on that, right, timing, he said he told that because the guy was asking for advice, like, how would you handle this as like a yogi, right? And he was like, well, and obviously things are so layered, but he said, let's say you spent so far, I don't know, 50 billion on this one issue, on this one area. Spend just 1 billion and go in there and build a hospital, build a school, build charities, get jobs for everybody. He's like, they will love you so much, they will worship you, and they will give you the terrorist group, and they're like, here, take them and take this too, like, you know. He's like, they will love you. But he's like, you're talking about like desperate people who like this group comes in and goes, we'll take care of you, well, whatever. 100%. So then all of a sudden they feel loyal to this group that they think is protecting them. He's like, why don't spend a quarter, not even, spend 1% of what you have already spent, and these people will be loyal to you. Yeah. Is it that easy?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that we're living in a world where it's so much more than a hospital. Some places need water, some places need so many different resources, right? But I do know like what you're sharing is very much like what I saw with the Taliban. So I was working from DC in the Pentagon, but what you would see is, you know, you have a group like the Taliban show up and say, we're going to give you food, water, and energy, and they don't have any of those things. It's so immediate in their face that they need that now. And so I think a lot of people are giving allegiance to these groups, not because they want to, but because they have to. And that's a socioeconomic issue as much as it's like a government political issue. But I think that's really interesting because the underlying concept of that is give people real resources versus fighting a war. And I mean, if there's anything I learned working in national security, it's like the more you know, the less you know. It's like the more I would learn, the more I'd say, wow, I really know nothing.
It's so layered and complicated.
It's so
many people
layered.
have asked me about certain things, and I just say, you know what? It's too layered for me to answer you in a text. Or for me to give you my opinion in a post on Instagram. It's so layered
Yeah.
You know, it's not as easy as this or that.
Yeah.
It's like, well, this, but then there's also that, and then also this, and then, but then they all do it, you know, it's like, it's too much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I wanted to know what you thought about that.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, politics humbled me, especially with elections coming up. Like, the biggest thing I've learned is, like, anyone who's trying to be elected, they don't have the full information in front of them because you need a security clearance to see all the information. So a lot of election promises are built on incomplete sets of information. And for that reason, it just kind of makes me feel like, what's the point of it all?
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah. Honestly, ever since I left like news as much, it was interesting because I'd go cover, I've interviewed Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
I've done interviews with presidential candidates, with royalty, with everyone, senators, you know, everybody.
Yeah.
And at the time, I remember I was covering a massive debate, like huge presidential debate. I think it was Hillary and Obama. And no, because they wouldn't have debated. It was something big. I can't remember who it was. And I remember asking a friend, or you know, about something, and they were like, "Well, what are you doing this weekend?" And I said, "Oh, I'll be at the debate." And they were like, "What debate?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, they don't know." And I remember thinking, like, God, how could you not know? This is such a huge thing, right?
Yeah.
But then now, not being in news, I'm like, "Oh, there was a debate."
Yeah, exactly.
You know, my friends are like, I'm like, "Oh, didn't know."
Yeah.
You know, like I'm so out of it for like years now. I love
hungover.
it.
Yeah,
totally. Just like, oh, that's nice.
Yeah, exactly. I did my time.
Yeah. Like totally, just like I'm just dreaming of like my farm in Spain, and I'm like, you know, like. Oh man, thank you so much. Is there anything you want to leave people with? Thank you also for the great. I'm so grateful for that offer. I know people will take you up on that. So $1,000 off.
Yes.
For this incredible, I mean, I can't wait. My book hopefully will be ready next year, and I'm like already thinking, okay, Ashley Sell.
Yeah. I mean, you yourself are such a prolific writer and healer, and
but see, that's the thing, to make a point, right, for everybody, is I am a writer, and I'm thinking like I want an agency that because just because you can do something. This podcast, by the way, full production crew, editing crew, like there's teams. I can edit, I can film, I can have all the camera gear.
Yeah.
But it's like, you know, there was a dating coach once that I heard say, he goes to women who are like so in their masculine, he's like, who won't let a guy open the door or whatever. And he's like, I know you can open the door, but it's more powerful to just like let them do it for you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's like, let them do it.
Yeah.
And so it's the same how I feel with this, is like, I could shoot it.
Yeah.
But I could also just let someone else shoot it.
Yeah.
And so sorry to interrupt, but like your point to me being a writer is like, but also it doesn't mean you have to do everything.
Yeah.
I'm writing my book fully on my own because I really want that to be my voice.
Yeah.
But like something like this, if they're already taking also your voice from the intake form, for me, it would be from my book. Yeah. It's already coming from you.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? Yeah.
I feel like creative process is so big, and I feel like you and I could probably do a whole episode about creative process. But for me, I had a ghostwriter collaborate with me in the way that I would write a chapter. First of all, I brainstormed with them what my book was going to look like. And this was during my career coaching era, my U-turn book. And then we kind of did like a table of contents and chapter summaries. And then from there, I would have a conversation with them before I went into each chapter, like, how am I opening this up? Because I just needed somebody to brainstorm with. And I don't know if anybody believes in, you know, personality assessments as much on your show, but I took Myers-Briggs, ENFJ, Obama's
I don't know
ENFJ.
anything about that, but I know you're the same as Obama. I'm the one Oprah is. I'm ENTJ.
Okay.
But I don't know what it means. I read it like years ago and I forgot.
Yeah. Okay. So the thing, I know ENFJs need to brainstorm to get what they need to say. So yeah, that would be interesting to see what your archetype
what mine is. I know it's ENTJ, I think, but I don't remember what it was.
We're the similar except for one, so I wonder what that difference is.
Yeah.
But for me, I would brainstorm and then I would write something, and then I would use a writer to help me keep my momentum. So let's say there's some research I needed and I knew there was something out there, but I wanted to express it nicely and weave it in. I would just put in the Google Doc a note like, I need a paragraph right here about the neuroscience of this.
So they were your ChatGPT.
They were my ChatGPT, but a human.
Yeah,
exactly.
Okay, cool. So that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anything you would leave people with?
I think the most important thing is just anyone who's listening, whether you want to be a professional speaker or not, the cat is out of the bag, that you need to have your voice out there for people to see you, hear you, and know about you. So if you're going to do that, whether it's getting on a bunch of stages at one era of your life and one season of your life, or it's something really big like a TEDx talk where it's 40 million people and then it's a one and done, it's a 9-minute, set it and forget it. I think I just hope people who have something big in their heart know that they deserve that, and they don't even need an agency like mine to do that. Like, if you want to put the time, it's time consuming. That's why a lot of people don't do it. That's why it seems hard. It's tedious.
It was one of my questions and I took it out, but
Yeah.
it's about like, not just the writing, although that's huge for a lot of people that you help them do that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a huge thing.
Yeah.
But the idea of having to sit there and submit a form. I mean, people
bajillion
don't even
of
want to fill out a dating profile.
Yeah.
People are like, oh God, what do I say about myself?
Yeah.
And it's also sometimes nice to have someone else say it about you. Like, hey, this is what I see.
Yeah.
Right? Because sometimes you're like, well, can I really say that about myself?
Yeah.
But somebody else would be like, yeah, you can. And actually, you should say more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank
I
you
feel
so
like that's it. Yeah, thank you so
Yes,
much.
Thank you. This is great.
Ever since I wrote my goals down with the pen, my dreams and reality have both been blending in. I just hope that in the end, my debt don't extend me all my dividends. If it did, I'd have to